everyone, so I'm making this video to just share with you guys some of my transfer experience back in my freshman year. So I'm currently a rising senior and I spent my freshman year in the top 50 public school. And then after my freshman year, I transferred to my current school, which is like a top 10 private school. Yeah. So I don't really call myself like a successful transfer applicant because I applied for like more than 8 schools or probably 8 schools at that time, and I only got into my current school. So yeah, but I just want to share with you guys some of the experience I had as a transfer applicant. And you know, like for every single applicant, no matter like what schools you're applying for, there's definitely some general steps like recommendation letters, like activities, like personal statement, you know, like GPA, you know, there's like definitely some general stuff that every single applicant share. So I just remember like when I prepare for all these things, I always want to talk with people who transferred before just to make sure I was still on the right track and I was still doing the right thing. Before we move on, I just want to emphasize 2 things. So the first thing is I transferred 2 years ago, so I don't really know what happened in the last 2 years. Maybe the system changed, maybe the requirements changed. So if anything I'm going to say today contradicts from what you hear from the school, just definitely follow the school instruction instead of mine. The second thing is I transferred after my freshman year, so it means I only spent like 1 year in my old school. So for people who plan to like spend 2 years in your current school and then transfer, the suggestions I have later might now like work perfect for you. Like it's like a two-sided thing because for 1 year transfer student, like, you don't really have much time to prepare. But on the other side, for people who transfer like after 2 years, the admission office definitely wants to see like more stuff from you, right? So you can't really tell whether it's good to transfer after 1 year or transfer after 2 years. It totally depends on you. When you feel prepared, you just do the transfer thing. The first thing is school activities. So I know lots of my friends, they were like school leaders, they had really good GPA back at high school, but when they enter college, they don't really like. They kind of like give up on themselves saying like, oh, I don't like this school, why am I making any progress here? But if you are thinking in that way, you're like totally wrong. And I don't personally believe that you can be a successful transfer applicant by thinking in that way. So just think about the difference between a transfer applicant and a first year applicant. Why you call yourself a transfer applicant? Not because you're just like 1 year older than a first year applicant, maybe because you have 1 more, maybe 2 more year college experience. And that's like the key point. I definitely believe every single admission office from the school you're applying for, they definitely pay lots of attention to your college experience because they more want to see you as a college student instead of a high school student. So it's like the key that you attend every single event, not like attend every single event, but just try your best to get involved to your current school, do things, meet new people, use resources you have to make yourself being a better person. So I remember when I was back in my old school, that was like when I was a freshman, I tried everything I could. I guess at that time it was also because all the classes I'm taking are like really basic, so I got a lot of free time just to try different things. And 2 things that I think are really important for me, I'm not sure what role it definitely played in my like transfer application. Those 2 things are definitely important to me. I mean, to my whole life. One thing is I joined like the school rowing team. That was like a really big challenge for me because back in high school I was really bad at any kind of sports. When I first went to try out, I was like, can I really do this? But I want to try. So yeah, so I just went to every single trial they had for that like 2 consecutive weeks. And then finally when it came to the stage that the coach was going to select people to get into his team, like my name was on the list. And I was so surprised. I asked him like, why me, right? And he told me like, it didn't really matter like where you started with, but what really matters to become a successful athlete is like your consistency, your hard working, and I saw those characters from you. So and I realized it was not only important for being like a professional athlete, it's actually important for every single thing that you decide to do in your life. You just need the consistency, you need your hard working. And the second thing I think that really important for myself is I joined like the school health center and worked as a student worker. Because at first I just went there to interview for a volunteer job, and I got a chance to talk with the manager, and he asked me like what my reason for being a volunteer, and I just said like, you know what, like I'm an international student. When I first entered school, I had no knowledge about like the United States like health system. So I was a little bit afraid every time when I went to the health center, because I don't know whether I'll be charged for something, or if there's any procedures I must went through before being able to talk with the doctor and things like that. So I just told them like I just want to be like an international student, like representative, just to help international students to get like the service they want at health center. And it turns out like the manager was really impressed by my enthusiasm, but I didn't realize at that time, and I just heard back 2 days later, and the email started with like, they no longer want you to be a volunteer, and I was so depressed, you know. And then I read the second half of the sentence saying like, but we want you to be a official student worker. So yeah, I just become official student worker, and turns out we did like a lot of like big things for international students, and also we went to local neighborhoods to just help people with like health education stuff. I mean, I just did a lot of things that I never expect myself being able to do, and this was also my first time like really enter like the health field. You know, it just totally changed my life. The second thing I want to talk about is recommendation letters. Especially for people who like me only have 1 year. I mean, you probably don't have 1 year, I only have 1 semester plus winter break plus maybe 1 month. So you need to find at least two. I think it's most school require maybe 3, and most of them are preferred to be like college professors or your advisors, people that know you really well. So that was like the biggest challenge I had for the whole transfer application stuff, because for other part you just feel you still have the control on your hand, like you can decide like what's like the pace for doing everything. But for recommendation letters, it was totally different. It depends on the professor, it depends on what classes you were taking the first semester, it depends on so many things. So I just remember like when I first entered college, the first semester class I selected, there are like 4 of them maybe. And because I'm a freshman and most of my classes I'm taking are really like 100, 200 level basic classes. So especially it's also a public school, so like the class size was like really big. I remember correctly, it was like more than 100 people for each of the class, and as a freshman it was really hard to ask like some smart questions in class. I mean, someone could probably do that, but for me it was impossible. And then after the first semester, it turned out one of the like, I think that's like a 200 level class I took, and there are only like 15 freshmen and all other like sophomore, junior, seniors, things like that. And it turns out like I was one of like the top 5 students in that class, and I just thought, oh, this professor could be a really good candidate for my recommenders. So after that, I went to his office hour like really frequently, probably every week, twice a week probably. So I would just like sat in his office, and I didn't really have questions, you know, because I didn't know anything. I didn't really have questions. And I remember at that time, there like junior and seniors came and they discussed some like economic issues. And the other 2 just gave this professor more time to get to know me. I also registered for another class he had the second semester. It's like a 400 level class. I didn't really recommend any of you to do the same thing as me, because it turned out I only got B+ for that class. So yeah, but it's a good try if you really want to let the professor to know more about you. You just spend more time with him, like that's like the key point. And this is one of the professor when I finally got a recommendation letter from, and turns out that's like, I think that's a really good recommendation letter, even though I couldn't get a chance to really read what's going on in the recommendation letter. The second recommendation letter I got from my economic advisor, but the thing is we only met each other for like no more than 3 times in that semester, and every time when we meet, we only talk about like, you know, registration issues and how do you feel about like class here, you know, like all the like general questions. So even though like I asked her for one of my recommendation letters, I don't really expect that to be like a fantastic or outstanding recommendation letter, because she basically didn't know much about me. So I decided like I need one more, but I don't know where that comes from. Yeah, remember the thing I said, like for people who transfer in 1 year, you only have 1 semester plus 1 winter break plus 1 month. And for that very last month, you couldn't really do much things because you basically need to give your professor some time to write your recommendation letters. You need to give them at least 1 month to finish everything, and probably 2 months will be better, right? So I realized that I only have 1 winter break left before I start my like transfer application, so which means I need to find like 1 more recommenders in this winter break. And I was like, what could I do? And then I realized one way that you can get to know someone in 1 winter break is by attending a study abroad program. So I went to study abroad like office and let them give me some suggestions about what program I could actually attend as an econ freshman, and then they recommend me for one of the program that was held by like the School of Media, and we spent like 14 days, that's like 2 weeks in Dominican Republic. We visited like local TV stations, learned how the media was working and how like the marketing stuff was going on in that country. I got really close with the professor. I couldn't really say we spent like 24 hours together each day, but we basically spent all like the breakfast, lunch, and dinner time together. And because of the language barrier, because people there were like, lots of them are like speaking Spanish and I only know English, so I was like sticking with the professor all the time, and we got a lot of chance to just talk about life, talk about my future plans, things like that. So I believe that like his recommendation letter definitely have a like really positive effect on my like later transfer application stuff. I know it definitely costs money, so I'm not saying this is like a requirement, like something you definitely need to do to get a good recommendation letter. I mean, everyone had different ways to do things, but I just want to provide you this option just in case you're like kind of like me, I only have 1 winter break left and don't know what to do and don't know how to find your recommenders.